Hey everybody, Mr. Gibson here. Obviously, as you know, I am on a field trip today, going to Dominican University and San Francisco State with my AVID class. So, for my first and third period AP US History classes, here's your lesson for today. We're really lucky to have Mr. Mellinger as our sub. If you think I'm nice, he is like the nicest man ever. So you're really going to love having him as your substitute today. So what I'd like to do is just walk you through the steps that we're going to go through today to try and knock out the rest of the Nixon and Watergate lecture and to start the project which you guys are going to complete in class today. So the first thing you want to do is make sure that you take out at some point between now and the end of the instructions the lecture notes that we started on yesterday in class. We didn't get to finish because Mr. Ryan had to come in and give the SBAC presentation, and that's totally fine. So what you want to do is take those notes out, and then when you log on to Google Classroom, what you will see is that the Nixon and Watergate Google Slides presentation is posted there so everyone can view it. And here it is. And where we left off, if I remember correctly, is that we were either finished with the Watergate scandal timeline or we were in the process of watching it. So whatever period that you recall, I want to think first period was in the middle of watching the timeline, and I want to think third period had just finished it. But you want to go ahead and finish watching this video because it gives a great kind of step-by-step account of what actually happened with the Watergate scandal that led to Nixon resigning the presidency. Then, of course, this is the last slide that you want to get down in your notes. It talks about a lot of the things that the videos mention, particularly Nixon's knowledge of the Watergate break-in, the subsequent cover-up, when he basically fired the Attorney General and the Assistant Attorney General and the Special Prosecutor that was basically investigating Watergate all in one night, known as the Saturday Night Massacre, when they found out that Nixon had been taping all of his conversations in the Oval Office, and the Supreme Court basically told him, listen, you got to turn over those tapes. And sure enough, when he turned over the tapes, there was 18 minutes that was missing, so we still don't know what those 18 minutes contained. But the evidence was overwhelming that not only Nixon participated in the cover-up, but did have knowledge of the fact that they were trying to sabotage the Democratic political campaign in 1972. When Nixon resigns on August 9th, Vice President Gerald Ford becomes president, and within a month of Nixon's resignation, Ford pardons him. So what I want you guys to do in your own time before you start the project is make sure that you watch the following two videos. This one is going to show you the dark side of Richard Nixon, and it's the dark side, truly is. He kept an enemies list, literally kept an enemies list, and used the federal government to go after his enemies. His favorite tactic was, if someone said something critical of him, or if someone openly criticized him in a position of power, he would use his role as the president to make sure that when they turned in their taxes, they got audited. And being audited is not a fun thing by the IRS. So this clip is going to talk to you about, the content of the Nixon tapes, what was said. It's also going to show you him actually resigning the presidency. And then the next one you're going to watch after that is the action that Gerald Ford took to pardon Richard Nixon. And at the time, a lot of people were really angry about that. They felt like Nixon got off easy. However, Gerald Ford, he doesn't really get too much credit for his very short stint as president. But he has to be given a lot of credit for pardoning Nixon. And the reason why that's the case is I want you to pay very special attention to the interview that's at the last part of this clip where Ford explains why the pardon actually proved and got Richard Nixon to admit that he was guilty of all of the things that people, suggested he was in terms of the Watergate scandal that would have eventually led to his impeachment. So you want to make sure you watch those two videos and finish the lecture notes before you start the DBQ project. Okay, so the DBQ project is where what you guys are going to do is you are going to basically write a DBQ comparing the presidencies of Richard Nixon and Lyndon Johnson. Both of them had their successes as president, Nixon's foreign policy, Johnson in terms of the Great Society and his domestic programs. but both of them had an event, in Nixon's case Watergate, in Johnson's case Vietnam, that forced them out of the presidency. So once you guys have gone through the lecture, what I'd like you guys to do is go back onto Google Classroom and start the project. Now the project, I'd like you to work in groups of 3. Groups of 4 are okay. You know, I want you guys to pick the groups. I'm just going to make it easy that way. Please don't let anybody be left out. So if you see somebody kind of on their own, make sure you invite them into your group. And then what you're going to do is you're going to take out the documents that we started to look at the very beginning of last week on LBJ and Nixon. Mr. Mellinger has extra copies of these, but what I have also done is given you guys digital copies on the Google Classroom assignment. So there's the LBJ set, there's the Nixon set. So if you have it, go ahead and take those out. If you don't, you know, that's okay. In terms of the project itself, what are you going to be doing? Well, everybody's been given a copy of this assignment. There it is. You only need one member of your group to turn it in when it's all said and done. And, excuse me, what you want to do is just make sure that you get as far as you can in this project, basically by the end of the period. We really don't have time to give an extension on this, so try and get as much done as you can. I think it'll be at least doable. So in terms of what exactly you have to do, well, make sure you type all your group name members here on the document, whoever you're using as your home document. And what you're going to do is, out of the documents that we looked at, I want you to pick 7 of them, okay? And it's going to be a DBQ that combines LBJ's and Nixon's presidencies. Okay, so here are the requirements, okay? First thing you're going to have to do is you're going to have to write a prompt for the DBQ. You're going to have to write a question that allows your reader to synthesize, connect, compare, etc., the presidencies of Lyndon Johnson and Nixon. So that's the first thing. The second thing you're going to have to do is the context. You're going to have to explain briefly to me, what exactly are you looking for from your reader in terms of their knowledge of this time period, okay? And you want to make sure that the context is not referenced in the documents, okay? So this is evidence beyond the documents, all right? So, for example, like, you want to give something very specific. Like, if you see something that references Nixon's foreign policy achievement in Russia in the document set, well, your context could be his foreign policy achievement in China, okay? That, or possibly how the 1968 election ran. The context is, remember, it's beyond what the documents are providing. In terms of the 7 documents that you pick from the 2 sets that have been provided, you have to make sure first that each president has at least 3 documents. Okay, so 3 from LBJ, 3 from Nixon. All right, then you'll obviously have an additional document that will be, you know, you'll either have 4 Nixon, 3 LBJ, or 4 LBJ, 3 Nixon. And only one of the 7 that you pick can be a visual. So there's 2 pretty powerful political cartoons in both set by famous political cartoonist Herb Bloch. Both would be great choices, but remember, only one of the 7 documents can be a visual. And then the last thing you do is, once you tell me why you picked the documents, you need to be able to write a historical synthesis that synthesizes the presidencies of LBJ and Nixon, but then you have to connect that comparison of LBJ and Nixon to another time period or event in U.S. or world history. Okay, so those are the 4 things that you have to do with this project. Now, where exactly are you going to do that? Well, there's the rubric right there, but where you're creating it is right here on the 2nd page. Here is where you type your prompt. Okay, here is where you're going to talk about what context you want your reader to provide that's beyond the document. Also here, please let me know what document you're picking. So if it's an LBJ or a Nixon document, please put the title of the document here. And then you want to explain here briefly, how does this document help the reader address the prompt? Fancy way of saying answer the question. And then lastly, this is where your historical synthesis goes. How are you going to take the presidencies of Johnson and Nixon that basically span from 1963 all the way to 1974, almost a little over a decade, and how are you going to compare that time period and those presidencies to another part of American history or world history? And that's pretty much it. If you guys happen to get done early, please obviously make sure that stuff is turned in. just on Google Classroom. You're welcome to use the remaining class time to either continue working on the Chapter 31 and 32 notes. Remember, all of those notes are due to me next Friday. You don't have to turn them in today. If you'd like to leave them with Mr. Mellinger, that's totally fine. But basically, guys, that's it. I will be back on campus on Friday. So if anything comes up, or if you have any questions, just shoot them to me. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So enjoy the friendliest sub next to Mr. Patarelli. And I hope that you guys have a great day. All right, I'll talk to you guys soon. And as always, may the force be with you all. Bye, everybody.